Hello, I'm Rob from AMR Physio, and today we have a video focusing on the rotator cuff. We'll get into what this is and what the best exercises for rehabbing this are, and most importantly, towards the end, we'll talk about how to approach it, including reps, sets, and whether to go into pain and that kind of thing. So how do you know if you've got a rotator cuff issue? Well, around 70% of shoulder pain in people over 45 is normally down to a rotator cuff disorder. Normally, people with rotator cuff issues tend to have pain on the outside of the shoulder, and a lot of the time this can be felt down the arm, sometimes to the elbow. The movements that will generally be more painful is things like lifting the arm out to the side, and you can get what we call a painful arc. And another common painful complaint is getting the hand up behind the back. The rotator cuff comprises of 4 different muscles. They attach from the scapula to the top of the humerus and allow all the movements of the arm. And it's normally the tendon, which is where the muscle is attaching to the bone, where most of the problems arise. And normally we'll be calling this a tendinopathy. So what are the best exercises for this? Let's get into them. Number 1 is external rotation. So one of the more important movements and several ways to do this. It involves keeping the elbow still and rotating the hand out externally away from the center of the body. A good way to do this is just side lying. You want your elbow attached to the side of the body, lifting the weight up. You can do this standing, doing the same movement but with a cable or with a band. And also with cable or bands, you can do this with the elbow out to the side, fixed in place, and pulling the hand back into external rotation. You can also do this movement laid down on the floor. Another variation is like a sleeper stretch, but using a weight to bring that shoulder into external rotation. So lots of options for this one, just pick which feels best for you. Number 2 is scapular retractions. So this involves squeezing of the shoulder blades together. This can be done in the form of a row on a machine or several other rowing variations, whichever takes your fancy. Another way to do this is with a band pulling it apart or with cables. And you can change the height with this, keeping it low or higher like a rear delt fly, depending on what you can tolerate. Number 3 is internal rotation. A commonly missed one, but still part of the rotator cuff. And it still has its place in rehab. But a lot of the time there are bigger muscles like the pecs or the lats that also get involved with this movement. So it can tend to get worked a lot anyway. But to be quite specific to the cuff, there is an exercise you can do which is basically the opposite of the external rotation. So you can use a cable, but this time with the elbow fixed, you're bringing it in towards the center of the body. Number 4 is elevation. This is bringing resistance up from hip level to around shoulder height and can be done with weights, cables or bands. You can also adjust the plane it's done in. You can bring it straight up in front of you into flexion, you can bring it to the side of you into abduction, or a mix between this into the scapular plane. Normally, abduction out to the side is the harder one for this type of issue, and it's something you can build into by doing the other ones first. But this can differ between different people. Number 5 is combined. Adding some of these movements together can also be a great way to increase recruitment of the rotator cuff and help with rehab. A really nice one is a high face pull. It combines scap retraction with external rotation. You can again do this with bands or with a cable machine. Another variation is something called box on shelf. Generally better with a band. It's basically adding external rotation resistance with the flexion and doing an action like you put in a box on the shelf. Does what it says on the tin. Another combined one is the sword draw. It's basically the action of drawing a sword from the opposite side. You know how it's shown in all the movies. You've got a bit of external rotation, a bit of elevation, and a bit of scap retraction. Lovely. You can be pretty creative with some of these combined ones. Let us know if you come up with any other interesting variations. Number 6 is pressing. This is getting to the harder, more compound stuff, and it's normally a bit later in the rehab process. And again, this can be done at different levels. You can do it like a chest press, you can do an incline press, or you can do a shoulder press. You can do this with weights, or you can do it body weight if you want to. It's not directly on the cuff, but it will definitely be getting involved. With this, as the movements start feeling okay, you can gradually start increasing the weight and the difficulty. Number 7, the final one, is stability. This is using the shoulder to keep the body weight stable. This could be as simple as a hand plank, and you can make it more difficult with movements forward and back, with controlled mountain climbers or something like that. You can do bear walks, going in and out of the movement, crawls, transitioning weight from one side to the other. You can do shoulder touches, and then getting even harder, getting that onto unstable surfaces. Even harder than that is into single arm work, doing reaches with the opposite arm in different directions. And to make this even harder, it's single arm on an unstable surface. Following from this is obviously a ton of sport-specific exercise you can do, but that would be very much down to an individual and not something we're really getting into in this video. But what are the important factors in terms of approaching this? A lot of the time, the research tends to suggest there isn't a superior exercise. The rotator cuff is involved in huge amounts of movement, so a lot of the time, just training it, whichever you feel more comfortable with, is going to be the better way to go. Now, obviously there's a lot of exercises here. We're not expecting you to be doing every single one. What you want to do is pick maybe 2 or 3 that you find at the most appropriate level and beneficial to you. And then as you progress to some of the harder ones. Key is the amount of exercise you do and dosing the amount of load you do in the right way. And it's important not to forget that this is a rehab plan. It's not like you're trying to build muscle, so a lot of time it's not kind of pushing through and into the pain a lot. With any of these, you should never really work into sharp pain. So if you're getting a grimace on your face, you've probably gone a bit too far there. So you just need to adjust the exercise and how you're doing it. Maybe don't go into as much range or don't have as much load. Overall, you should feel after the workout that you could do that workout again, and then you know you're kind of hitting that right level. It's also important with tendinopathies in general to monitor your symptoms kind of 24 to 48 hours afterwards. You might actually feel okay while you're doing the exercise, but if it's starting to hurt afterwards, so say you've done the exercise in the day and then that night or the next morning you're getting a lot of pain, it probably means you've gone a little bit too far. Tendons can sometimes just tend to lag in the response. If there's no additional pain the following day after doing the exercise program and you feel like it can be repeated that day, then you're on the right track. Once the baseline's been established, it's all about being consistent and then progressing. In terms of reps and sets, it might be something like aiming to build up to 3 sets of 15 on some of these exercises. It doesn't mean you'll necessarily start there. You might start on 2 sets of 10. If it feels good, then build up. If it feels bad, then pull back down. If you eventually do get to 3 sets of 15 on the exercise and you're not getting any more pain, then build up the resistance or increase the range that you're going on, and that's how you progress. But again, you might not progress back to 3 sets of 15. As you progress the load up, you might go back to 2 sets of 10 and build up again. And just keep repeating that process until you get to the point where you can do everything you want to do. Guys, thanks for taking the time to watch this. I hope it's been really useful for you. Please do us the honors and help us build the channel by subscribing. It will mean a lot to us. If you've got any questions, just let us know and we will see you on the next one.